Good evening. Tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live stream video on the town's live stream webpage at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind the intent of this process is to review the application that is before the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the applicant or authorized agent must contact the Secretary Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic, an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following process. If you are watching the live stream of this hearing on oakville.ca, and if you wish to speak to an item on the agenda, please call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. The phone number will also be posted on the live stream page at oakville.ca. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. When you call in, you will be asked for your name and item number that you wish to address. When the chair of the committee polls for interested parties, press the *6 button to unmute yourself. The applicant or agent will be given the opportunity to briefly explain to the committee the basis of their application and answer any questions that may arise. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for a presentation. You will need to state your full name and address for the record. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must also state their full name and address for the record, and a maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for each presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair, and any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. The applicant or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to the comments made by interested parties and answer any questions that the committee members may have. If the applicant or agent has any concerns found in staff report, particularly with any proposed conditions, this will be the opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and this will mark the end of all discussion. Any person desiring a notice of a decision for an application must provide a written request, preferably through email, to the Secretary Treasurer. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed no later than 10 days for minor variance and 15 days for consents to the applicant and agent and any other person who has filed a written request for such notice. The last day of the appeal to the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal will be noted on the decision. Only the applicant, specified persons, or public bodies may appeal the committee's decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Please note that in November of 2022, Bill 23 legislation, the More Homes Built Faster Act, amended the Planning Act to remove appeal rights for members of the public. If no appeal is received within the prescribed timeframe, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary Treasurer will notify the applicant and anyone who has received a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in this hearing are to be courteous to and respectful to the members of the committee, town staff, and any other person participating in this electronic hearing. Tonight's electronic hearing is being video recorded and available for future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We have any regrets? No. Mr. Dickey, I don't see you. Is your camera on?
Madam Chair, I just renamed his name, his title, and now he disappeared from the screen. So he might be having some technical difficulties.
Okay. I'll ask him when he comes back in if there's any declaration of security interest. But for the rest of the members, are there any declarations of security interests? Okay, I see none. Thank you. Madam Secretary Treasurer, just remind me to ask Mr. Dickey when he comes back in.
I will.
Rick, I will take requests for deferral or withdrawal of any applications. If you feel that you need to further discuss your application with town staff or any variances have been missed, this will be the time to advise us for a request for a deferral. Madam Secretary Treasurer, will you see who raised their hand up and invite them into the panel?
Yes, I just promoted Mr. Bobby Joe McKinnon for the application 37 Pebble Place.
Application, sorry, what?
37 Pebble Place.
Oh, okay, yes, CAV 094.
Correct.
Okay. Good evening. Mr. McKinnon? Your camera is off and you're still muted, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, Bobby Joe. Sorry,
Good evening, Madam Chair.
I assumed it
That's
was a man. I
okay.
should not
It
have.
happens. Good evening. I am the agent, Bobby Joe McKinnon, representing the owner of 37 Pebble Ridge. We would like to request a deferral to discuss our application further with planning.
Okay,
An extra variance was added to the application, so we would like to discuss that as well.
very well. Thank you. Members, all those in support of a deferral? Okay, the application has been deferred and you will see the Secretary Treasurer at your earliest convenience. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
I promoted Mr. Matthew Fratton Shirley for the first application 22450.
Good evening. Yeah, I
Good
see
evening,
him now.
Madam Chair, committee members. Yeah, this is Mr. Matthew Frattercangeli.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, good. How are you?
So you are here for application CV 091 of 2023, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yolanda Drive.
Very well. There are a few letters of objection, and I will note that you do have 5 letters of support. I will read the names of the individuals. You have been sent all this information.
Yes.
I do encourage you to reach out to the neighbors and have a conversation with them.
Absolutely.
But just for the record, I will just state the names of the letters that we've received, just so that they know that we've received them if they're watching. So
Yes.
I have letters from Edward and Donna Cooper, Nancy Ortenberg, Agatha and Yokoje Sikora, Miss Virginia McLean on behalf of Agatha as well, Brian Sheehan, Ilona and Aldo Martellacci, Byron Martin and Isabel Vocia, Adrian Gauthier, Donna Petrelli, Robert Becker, Ian Last, Kyle and Claire Van Boxemere. And I have 5 letters of support from a Eugenio Ruiz and Rocio Salzar, and Emma Murphy, a Leanne and Kevin Swalwell, sorry if I'm misspelling it, Dinaz Naigamawala, and a Wajat Mahmoud. So everyone's now listed. I appreciate your patience, and I understand you do want a deferral given the letters of opposition and the notes from staff, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Madam Chair. And also, if I may, I didn't see any of the opposition's contact information on the correspondence I received. I'd like to at least offer my contact information for them to contact me directly to discuss any questions they may have. And we have already been working on revised drawings. We have eliminated all of the variances except for RFA and lot coverage. So I would like to share the revised plans and hopefully discuss with the public the changes we made.
Very well. And once we've concluded, you can reach out to the Secretary Treasurer and provide her for all that information because she has their emails as well as their addresses.
Okay,
So
great.
she can coordinate that between the two of you. I just can't list their addresses on
Understood.
in public.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. All those in support of a deferral? Okay, the application has been deferred. You'll see the Secretary Treasurer at your earliest convenience. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I know we're on the topic of deferrals here. I am here to speak on another application for Kent Avenue.
Yes, I have you here, 092. Are you seeking a deferral on that one as well?
Well, I'd just like to say there was a bit of uncertainty with the staff report saying that there was a variance missed for the front yard setback. I suppose
Yes.
it's more of a question for the planner of record. From our understanding, there was a permit issued before 2014, the creation of the new bylaw, and substantial construction was permitted or completed before the introduction of the 2014 bylaw. So we had taken that garage setback at 7.45 meters as the setback at the time that the 2014 bylaw was created. But it seems as though maybe the planner is actually not recognizing that setback and taking the setback of the original house, perhaps.
Okay, I have you on the agenda as
Okay.
the second application after the
Okay.
one that just got deferred. So how about we table this for a second? And if you
Yes.
do decide to take a deferral, I will grant you that
Okay, thank you, Madam
opportunity.
Chair. Okay,
I just want to see if there's anybody else who's seeking a deferral at this time so we can get the meeting rolled.
understood. Okay,
Thank you. Hang tight for a second. Thank you.
will do. Thank
Madam Secretary Treasurer, anyone else other than Mr. Jelly? Sorry if I'm saying it wrong.
Madam Chair, I don't see anybody. However, if you can ask them to ask if anybody else wants to speak, they can raise their hands. I don't see it.
Okay, anyone in attendance who is seeking a deferral at this time, please raise your hand so that you can be invited into the meeting. Just give them 30 seconds.
And Madam Chair, I see Mr. Stuart Dick, he came back to the meeting.
Okay, Mr. Dickey, can you please put your microphone on and your camera on?
Oh, we lost him again.
Oh,
no, he's
that's
there.
unfortunate.
He's there.
I see him, I just don't see his face. There he is. And now you just need to unmute. Bottom right, I think. Mr. Hardcastle.
Am I in there? Oh,
Yeah,
But
okay,
it's
I can
still-
hear you now. It says you're muted, but I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, just leave it as it is. I have to ask you, did you have any declarations of pecuniary interests since you just joined us? Okay, we keep losing your voice. Just no?
No,
Okay, very well. Thank you. Madam Secretary Treasurer, can you ask supporting staff to take a look? I see Mr. Dickey as a member on the phone and I see him in camera. Maybe there is a bit of an interaction between the two.
I believe, Madam Chair, that he has joined with 2 ways, and that's why he's still on. But when he speaks through the phone, not through the video. Where is the video, Mr.
Yeah.
Dick, would you please repeat again and talk to the chair to see?
yeah, I can say something? It seems to be a double. I'm hearing echo.
Yes, did you hang up the other line? You were connected through a phone, correct?
On a computer. I had trouble getting in, so I could have gotten in when I thought I hadn't. So it makes sense I'm in here twice, yes. How do I get out of one of them?
I'm not really sure because we hear you from one
I
and we
can
see you from one.
I can remove the second one, but I don't know
Okay.
if we can hear you. I will try to remove now the one of the.
Because there's an echo with it as well. So I'd like to get rid of that echo.
Okay, I removed that
Okay.
one. So can you?
Okay, Stuart, can you try unmuting yourself now from the computer?
Okay, there we are.
Okay, perfect. It's working. All right.
Oh.
Very, no worries. It happens. Okay, we're back to, can I call you Matthew? I'm gonna try it again. Frater Cangeli.
Yes, Madam Chair, that was pretty much perfect. Frater Cangeli, yes.
Okay, Frater Cangeli. Okay. You're up. So you were asking about the minimum front yard setback. Okay, let's get the planner on file here. We have them both. We just need, there we go. It's Miss McKnight. Good evening. So perhaps now I'm just going to call in to order the actual item number so that everything on record is correct. So this is CAV 092-2023 at 1083 Kent Avenue. Again, it's CAV 092 of 2023. If you have interests in this application, please call 905-815-6095 and staff will take your name and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. Okay, would you be kind enough to ask your question again so that Ms. McKnight can be there for it from the start?
Yes, good evening, Ms. McKnight. I just noticed in your report, you did mention the possibility of a missing variance and kind of maybe suggested that a deferral could be in order. I guess we just had some uncertainty as we were taking the front setback at the time of 2014, the zero suffix bylaw creation, we were taking that setback as 7.45, which would be the setback of that garage on the site, which would be part of that expansion for the permit that I believe was issued in about 2012. So that's why on our site plan, we had shown the front yard setback as 6.45, 1 meter less than the existing setback, but perhaps you had a different view on it.
Yeah, thank you. So through you, Madam Chair, the front yard setback is calculated by subtracting 1 meter from that legally existing on the effective date of the bylaw. And I understand that you're stating the front yard setback legally existing on the effective date that the zoning bylaw was passed was more than 1 meter from that now being proposed. I don't have confirmation of that information in front of me. And we do rely on we do trust our zoning staff have completed a thorough review. If you feel feel confident that the information that you're presenting is accurate, you could always move forward with that. And if once you go through the building permit stage, if a variance is in fact needed for this item, then our staff would flag that and you would have to come back through the process. Yes. Or there's the option to defer.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Understood. Yeah, I guess the question would be, you know, we had the permit for this garage expansion was issued before 2014, and construction of this garage was substantially completed before 2014. I guess our question is, what does the town accept as the legal front yard setback at the time of 2014? Since these permits were approved and construction had already started, would the town take this 7.45 meter as the front yard setback?
Through you, Chair, the front yard setback is measured from the front property line to the closest I guess, the front wall of the existing dwelling. So if the garage does in fact project that much farther, then it could be measured to that line. Unfortunately, without the plans in front of me, I don't want to confirm whether measurement is accurate or not. I do trust that you have done your due diligence on this item, but
Absolutely, yeah. The measurement we're proposing is actually from an OLS survey. It's from a survey, legit survey. So that's the number that we're using.
Okay, so Matthew, what would you like to do? Would you like to take time to speak to zoning staff and make sure that they will accept the measurement? Or
Yeah, Madam Chair, I guess it's a bit of an interesting situation. At one side, I don't want to cause my clients extra time and money for a new application, but on the other side, we believe that we've shown the correct setback. If it's okay with you, Madam Chair, maybe you could perhaps move us to the end of the agenda, and I have a moment to discuss with the homeowner about how they view the situation, what they may want to do. They are listening in.
sure, I could do that, but Ms. McKnight, I don't think you answered his question because the garage was substantially completed within the 2014 bylaw. Is that figure still honored, or is he subject to the figures of the 2020, I guess, bylaw?
Right.
That was his question. I don't believe that was answered, is what he's trying to get at. Because when
Okay,
permits are granted and construction has commenced, and he's saying that the construction has almost been completed, or because they are doing changes, they're subject now to the 2020 bylaw.
Through you, Chair. Yes, so it is from that legally existing on the effective date of the bylaw. So the effective date of the bylaw would be the 2014 zoning bylaw as amended.
And I suppose that the town would, if a permit was approved before 2014 and construction had commenced, then the town would recognize that approved permit and that construction that had started as the legal front yard setback, is what we would assume. But perhaps the town only accepts that setback once construction has been fully completed and occupancy has been granted. This is where the gray area is coming in for us.
Okay. Mr. Talaski, did you have a comment? I saw your hand go up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I think the applicant may be correct, and even the variance that's being suggested doesn't seem to be right. If the applicant's saying the garage existed, which is the forward-facing face, on the day that the bylaw came into effect, then the front yard setback that's enforced today should be to the face of the garage. Zoning suggesting they need a front yard setback of 6.45 meters, but none of the building that's being proposed is that far forward. So I'm not even understanding why it looks like the 6.45 is what exists today. And they're suggesting the 7.45 minus the 1 meter would give you the legal setback today. And they're suggesting they need to get a variance to get that setback. But they're not even proposing to build to that. So I think the applicant might be right, but for the applicant's benefit, if you're right and you proceed, when you go for a building permit, you may be told you got to come back.
Yeah.
If you defer, the town's going to charge you a deferral fee. So I
Yes.
just wanted to And, perhaps if I put Mr. Hardcastle on the spot, maybe if he sees this same way, I just thought I wanted to get this out before you go and talk to your client, so we get
Sure.
as much
Thank you.
information to you as possible.
Mr. Talowski, in response, I do see, in fact, I do see this the same way as you've laid it out.
Okay.
Madam
you
Chair,
want-
if
Yes, go
perhaps you
ahead.
could give me just, the owner is listening, if perhaps I could just go on mute for about 2 minutes to discuss with the client, or if you prefer, you can move us to the end of the agenda and maybe see how they
No,
feel about this.
I can give you some time. Let's go through one more application and give you that
Okay.
time and then come back to you. How's that?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, very well. You're welcome. So we'll move on to CAV 093 of 2023. I have a request to attend from Andrew and Susan Cockwell. This is at 283 Balsam Drive. Again, this is CAV 093 of 2023 at 283 Balsam Drive.
Good
Good
afternoon.
evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Arlene Beaumont, Oakville and Associates. We're the agents for the owners of 283 Balsam Drive. I did send through a PowerPoint. Oh, great. You've got it. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Just to provide a quick background, the committee did approve minor variances about 2 years ago in June of 2021 for maximum front yard and dwelling depth. That project never went ahead. And in January of this year, the property was sold. So we're proceeding today with a new owner, new proposal, and new variances. Next slide, please. So we have some renderings. I'm sorry, these weren't submitted with the application. I just got them the other day. So we have the front and the rear. What I wanted to point out here is, first of all, in the front, that the garage is a standard 2-car garage from the street. And there's also quite a few architectural features in the roof line and at the front of the dwelling. There's some French balconies that are hard to see. And we've got a nice front porch that do break up the massing on the front of the home. And there are a number of trees at the front of the property. Next slide, please. So this is, again, a rear elevation, again, big porches and some definition in the roof line to break it up into smaller elements and reduce the appearance of massing. Next slide, please. This is an aerial photo. And what I wanted to show here is, first of all, the amount of evergreen trees at the front and at the rear of the property. And there's also some mature trees along both side lot lines. Next slide, please. So the first variance is a proposed garage area of 63.16 meters from the street. The garage is a standard 2-car garage. The extra area is internal to the garage and is located behind the area where the cars would be parked. Next slide, please. So I've just highlighted where that extra garage is. So that yellow area is the extra garage area, and it completely internal to the garage. Next slide, please. We also require variances for side yard setback, and I'll just explain this. Initially, we were only going to have a variance for side yard setback on the north side. However, we did confer with the neighbor on the north side, and she had concerns. She has a well-established privet hedge adjacent to the property line, and she had concerns that with construction and the overdig that they would be into the roots of her privet hedge. So the decision was made by my client to move the dwelling southward. And so we ended up having minor variances on both sides, but that's just to protect that privet hedge for the neighbor on the north side. Next slide, please. We also require a variance for dwelling depth. The proposed dwelling depth is 31.52 meters. This includes a 1-story portion on the north side of the building. The second story has a depth of 23.7 meters. I just wanted to also note that that one-story portion that does extend beyond the base of the house is adjacent to the neighbor's garage. And there are mature trees on the property line and on the neighbor's lot that will help to screen views of that dwelling depth and that extra one-story area. Next slide, please. So this is the north side yard elevation. As you can see, that one-story piece. And as I mentioned, the second story is 23.7 meters in depth. Next slide, please. We do require a variance for residential floor area as well. And as I noted at the beginning, we do have some design elements that do reduce the appearance of massing on the front and the rear elevations. And also there are very generous setbacks to the front and the rear lot lines. Those very big trees, I'm sure when you drove past, you saw these very big trees on the front lot, on the front of the home that are going to screen views. And there are trees at the back of the property that are going to screen views from the neighbors to the rear. Next slide, please. Coverage variance is less than 1% over the permitted. The dwelling itself has a coverage of 17.69%. The additional coverage is related to a cabana at the back of the lot, which is a one-story structure, and also the proposed covered and rear porches that are at another 3.21% so we're just slightly over 1% with that generous cabana and the front and rear porches. Next slide, please. And the front yard setback. Our final variance is for front yard setback. The reason we require this is because if we met the bylaw requirement, the proposed home will be well in front of the homes on either side. So the proposed front yard setback of 27.65 meters is required to align the new home between the homes that are existing on either side. They have a setback of 22.19 meters on the south side and 30.87 meters on the north side. And the next slide will just illustrate that. Next slide, please. So there's the site plan drawing. You can see the dwelling to the south is slightly in front. The proposed dwelling in the middle is between the front and the north dwellings. And just to wrap it all up, next slide, please. So we have a very deep property, 90 meters. We have very nice front and rear yard setbacks. The excess garage area is internal. The side yards, as the planning report notes, are sufficient for drainage and retention of the mature vegetation along the side lot lines. The dwelling depth is broken down into a 2-story portion and a 1-story portion. Next slide, please. And the lot coverage is less than 1% over the permitted, and the front yard setback is required to align the proposed dwelling with homes on either side. Just in closing, this is a neighborhood of large lots and large dwellings, and we feel that the home that's proposed for 283 Balsam is very much in keeping with other homes in this neighborhood. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Beaumont. Are there any questions or items of clarification of Ms. Beaumont at this time? Okay, Mr. Dickey, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just ask this right up front. You've got a lot that's 92 feet wide, 28 meters. I'm just surprised you can't comply with the side yard setback zoning bylaw. Why couldn't you make your house narrower?
Well, I suppose that would be possible. It is a large family that's going to be living here, and we have tried to provide, decent yards so that we can retain the mature vegetation on the lot lines, and there is sufficient area for drainage along the side lot lines as well.
clarification. It's interesting that you want to build a house that's 95 feet deep, but on that north side where the depth of that house is, you want a narrower side yard setback. Like you seem to be wanting one thing but not willing to give up another, which you've got such a huge lot. I don't really have any trouble with the fact that I shouldn't say it like that. You got a huge lot, a 95 feet deep house. Okay, I could see that, but why not give at least the zoning setback there?
I can't answer the question. I'm not the architect or the homeowner. Like I said, we did compromise. We had originally proposed to have only one side yard as an issue at side yard setback variance. And because of the concerns of the neighbor on the north side, we decided to shift the dwelling southward. We ended up with a variance on both side yards, and that was to protect her privet hedge.
But you would have been even less of a setback on the north side under that original proposal,
That's correct, yes.
where your 95-foot long side wall is.
Yes, and as I said, we did take into consideration that neighbor's concerns, and we did shift the building southward a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Any other questions or remarks or clarifications? Has anyone called in with interest in this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
Yes, Madam Chair, and I'm promoting Mr. Andrew Cockwell to panelist.
Hello, good evening, Mr. Cockwell. Go ahead, sir.
Evening, Madam Chair and committee members. We submitted a letter in this respect last evening, but was informed that it would not be posted because it was received after 4:30 p.m. Respectfully, we weren't aware of that deadline. The notice we received said a day before the hearing date. So perhaps if it might have been helpful to know that. In any event, it's disappointing that neither the homeowner nor her agent sought to contact us. We've just heard she contacted the neighbor to the north about a hedge, despite proposing to put a bungalow in virtually our backyard. We're one of only 3 properties that abut the subject property. And again, they have not sought to contact us. We don't object to the variances that were sought, but we do object to the placement of the building at the back of the site, which is not an accessory building or a cabana, as it was just described. It is literally a bungalow, similar to many houses in Oakville, of approximately 1,406 square feet on the main floor and another 1,400 square feet in the basement. It's fully enclosed. It includes 2 bay windows and several other windows. It's not intended to be open air as some pool cabanas are. This is virtually a home. And there were no variances sought as to this building, which runs almost the width of the lot. So, for example, no variance was sought as to the minimum yard setback being inconsistent with the requirement that it be 10.5 meters. That's table 6.3.1, row 6, column RL1. It is 6.35 meters at its narrowest, which puts it, as you might appreciate, very close to our backyard. We abut the back of that proposed building. The placement of the rear building is so deep in the yard, we understand is driven by the desire to extend the front yard setback from the bylaw requirement of 16 meters to 27.65 meters. So they've shifted the entire lot plan backwards virtually into our backyard. They could solve that problem by actually, not taking as much of a variance in the front yard. Now, we were just presented with an aerial plot. I don't know if you caught it because it moved quite quickly, but it was an aerial plot which showed a red outline in the presentation you were just shown. It is absolutely wrong. It showed that the trees at the back of the yard were on our property. As you can see from the actual drawing that you were presented, those trees are on the subject property. The setback proposed where the building is placed will destroy the root system of more than a dozen trees, which you can see on the actual drawing, not on what you were just presented, which tries to present the trees on our lot. Those will destroy the root system of more than a dozen trees that appear by their height to be amongst the oldest in Oakville. Simple fix would be to abide by the 10.5-foot minimum yard requirement by the bylaw, which would require the plan being shifted into the front yard by 4.15 meters, which would thus be a minimum front yard of 23.5 meters versus the 27.65 requested, which would still be a variance of greater than 7.5 meters greater than the front yard setback. Finally, it appears that the bungalow's chimney exceeds the height restriction of 4.05 meters, 4.0 meters, that's section 652. And the building itself appears to exceed the maximum permissible size of 129.1 meters, that's section 652 as well. Again, there were no variances requested with respect to any of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cockle. Ms. Beaumont, care to comment?
Okay, so I apologize if my aerial photo doesn't have lot lines exactly. I was doing my best. There were no lot lines on the town of Oakville aerial photo, which I used. So I was just sort of guesstimating as to where the lot was. I was just trying to show the number of trees and the amount of screening that there is. We have not applied for any variances for the cabana. Again, that was something we're working on, worried about the house right now. The cabana will be part of the landscaping component, and we may in fact come back for variances for that at the time that we're building doing the landscape work and the cabana. It's sort of on there right now as sort of a placeholder. They are intending to build the cabana. But again, that's going to be probably a couple of years from now, and the landscaping plan could potentially change over that time.
Ms. Beaumont, but Mr. Cockwell makes a very good point about moving the house forward and not having the subject of a 27-meter setback. Why was that not considered? You wouldn't be so close to the edge.
I understand. I think the architect and the homeowner wanted to align the new home in between the two homes on either side, and they sort of picked a number that averaged it out to the best that they could. Pulling it forward would bring it in line with the house to the south, but it would be far in front of the house to the north. So they've tried to align it between the two.
Okay. And what comment do you have in terms of speaking to Mr. Cockwell and reaching out to the neighbors? I mean, given the amendments to the laws, I mean, he does have a right to that opinion, and you have not given him that accessibility to weigh in.
Absolutely, and we should have done that, and I apologize, that should have been done. We did reach out to the neighbor to the north. I'm not sure if the homeowner reached out to the neighbor to the south or not, so I apologize, that should have been done.
Okay. I see several hands up. Mr. Tlowski, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You say you're sorry you didn't reach out to the owner, but it looks like in order to satisfy the owner on the north side that you did reach out to, you caused concerns from the neighbor on the south side that you didn't reach out to, and I'm not sure how you justify that as being appropriate. Should you not now be taking this back and reaching out to the homeowner on the south side and try to satisfy that owner the way you did for the owner on the north side?
I don't know that the owner on the south side has an issue. Has that been expressed?
You're correct. It's east side.
Or east side, my mistake. Let me rephrase the question. We've got a neighbor raising concerns. Are you willing to reach out to that neighbor to try to satisfy them?
Absolutely. And we can certainly discuss the landscaping plan and the cabana with the neighbor to the east. Yes.
But that would be too late after a decision's rendered, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I understand your point. Yes, yes.
Thank
But
you.
we're not, at this point, we are not applying for any variances for that cabana.
Well, you are in that you're applying for a coverage variance, are you not?
Yes, we are applying for coverage and the
So
cabana is in,
if the cabana wasn't there, you wouldn't need the coverage variance.
I believe we still, oh, no, you're correct. We would not. You're correct. We would not.
So you are applying for a variance for the cabana.
Yes, yes, because the cabana is included in our overall coverage.
And just, you said earlier, maybe I didn't quite understand it, that the cabana was more of a placeholder and you might come back with more variances for it?
Well, right now, the focus is on the single family dwelling to get that constructed and the cabana will be done at a later point. If we find that the variances are required, then we could come back at that time for setback variances if they're required.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Rockwell, your hand is up. Did you want to say something else? We typically don't go back and forth, but I will allow
I'm
you
sorry.
that courtesy.
Yeah, I appreciate
Go
that.
ahead.
I wanted to understand, if we approve tonight, this drawing and the cabana is on it, doesn't that mean the cabana is approved? Even though it's not a cabana on it, but-
No, I mean, technically, yes, our decision is tied to the plans as submitted, which is why we're having this discussion. But in
That's my
effect,
confusion.
yeah, in effect, if they needed more variances, then they'd have to come back, basically. And that's what Mr. Klawski was picking up on. So
But that's
I
my
hope that,
confusion, because they're sort of saying, approve these plans, but the cabana is not, or, bungalow, whatever you want to call it, it's not going to be there, but it may be there and we'll come back. That's the only
Yeah.
confusion. I'll put my hand down.
yeah, no problem. We were thinking along the same lines, and we'll have Ms. Beaumont comment, and then we'll take it from there. Has anyone else called in, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
There is no anybody else at this
Okay,
time.
very well. Ms. Beaumont, if you care to have any further comments, and if the members have any questions, please raise your hand and let me know.
So if the coverage variance is approved this evening, and if we have conversations with the neighbor to the east and we make revisions, perhaps bring the size of the cabana down, or we move it closer to the home, we move it westward, that really, the variance is in place, but if we need variances for side yard, we can still, side yard or rear yard setback, we can come back for that. It's just the coverage variance that we're seeking this evening. And if the neighbor is unhappy with the size of the cabana and we talk to him and reach an accommodation, we can always reduce the size of the cabana without any issues. The cabana could come down in size.
You know what, Ms. Beaumont, this is a bit unorthodox of me, but honestly, I am not going to support this application. So I would prefer that you take the deferral and you speak to the neighbor and you come back with a more concrete site plan and plans that we can approve and be comfortable that you're not coming back with more variances. As it is, you're already stretching it.
Okay. So then,
And that's my opinion. That's my opinion. I'm being straightforward with you. If the members of the committee have anything further to add, they may very well do so. Mr. Talowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you're absolutely right in offering this option at this point. I'm not willing to support this application on the grounds that this does appear to be an overbuild and it is causing concerns with the neighbors. So I can't find this to be minor or appropriate at this time, but although not a test, I will add I'm disappointed. Ms. Beaumont's firm is regularly at the committee. They understand that the committee expects applicants to speak to all their neighbors, and it just seems in this case, as I articulated earlier, they spoke to one person, made adjustments to accommodate their concerns, but in so doing raised concerns with another neighbor that wasn't spoken to. So,
Any other comments or? Okay. It's up to you. You can continue, or you can take the deferral at the end. You have to tell me what you'd like to do.
So I think what we'll do, the best thing to do would be defer, and we can speak to the neighbor to the east about his concerns about the cabana.
Okay. I would suggest you talk to all 4 neighbors and make sure that you do what's best before
Okay.
you come back. Okay, so you are going to go forward with a deferral?
Yes, please.
Okay, very well. All those in support of a deferral? Okay, your application has been deferred, none opposed. You'll see the Secretary Treasurer once you've done your due diligence and spoken to the neighbors. Mr. Cockwell, you're on record. It's in your hands now together. All right?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Have a good evening, everyone. Mr. Fratacancelli, are you with us still?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm still here. I'll make this very brief. I did discuss with the owner and they would like to move forward with a deferral to stay on the safe side of things.
Okay, very well. I just had a question for you. You received these notes on Friday. Did you try to contact zoning or Ms. McKnight?
Yes, actually, immediately I did contact the C of A at Oakville email. They said, unfortunately, the planner couldn't be available to discuss and that we could talk about it at the hearing. I understand that the planners only provide comments to the committee and not to applicants directly.
Ms. McKnight, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. I just want to advise I've done a little bit more digging into this missed variance. And I'll note that staff did recognize that the front yard to the existing house is 7.45 meters. However, the minimum under the previous zoning bylaw was 7.5 meters. As such, the front yard setback that is existing is not actually legally conforming. And that is the reasoning behind the variance, the missed variance. So a front yard setback of 6.5 meters would be permitted because that's 1 meter less than that permitted at the time of the previous zoning bylaw. However, 6.45 contravenes the existing zoning bylaw.
Okay, so there you have your answer, Matthew.
Okay.
So
Okay,
you
so
will take the defer. Sorry, go ahead.
actually, in that case, Ms. McKnight, if you could confirm that the existing required front yard setback as of today is, you said, sorry, was it, could you repeat the number?
It would be 1 meter less than that legally existing at the time of the passing of the bylaw. Unfortunately, the front yard setback legally existing at that time, or the front yard setback existing at that time was not legal. And the required front yard setback was 7.5 meters.
So you're at 7.45, the required is 7.5. So take away 1, you would be at required to be at 6.5, but you are right now at 6.45, correct?
Understood.
Is that correct on your drawings? Because I recall Mr. Talowski looking at the plans and there was an issue with the numbers that he could see.
We are showing a 7.45 as the garage setback. And that would be also the new proposed front porch setback and even a bit less than that. So if the required setback current 5, then we would not comply currently. And I guess this is an existing condition that we would need to add to the variance list.
Okay, so you will, Mr. Talowski, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe what Ms. McKnight is saying, that previous bylaw would have been 7.5. It was at 7.45, so it wasn't a legal use at the time. So that's what's causing it, and it would be up to the applicant to prove that this 7.45 was a legal non-conforming use at the time for this variance not to be required. But, so that makes more sense now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would think the applicant's doing the right thing, seeking a deferral, and in the event that he's able to convince zoning that the variance isn't required, I would hope the town wouldn't charge him a deferral fee when he comes back. But we'll let him go and have those discussions.
That would be extremely appreciated if the town could do that for the client, yes, to avoid the deferral fee.
Okay, so in the event that you are right, then we can, I guess, waive the deferral fee, but it's up to the committee, Mr. Talowski. I think we have to make the motion for it. So
Yes, the committee would have to vote to waive the fee, but as I say, if staff's right, then the applicant's doing the right thing, seeking a deferral, and the fee would apply. If the applicant is correct in the end, then I think when he comes back, he could ask the committee to consider waiving the fee.
very well. Okay, we will do that at that time then. So all those in support of a deferral? Okay, the application has been deferred, and we'll see you when you're able to get in on the nearest agenda, and we'll deal with the deferral fee at that time.
Thank you very much.
Lined
Thank you
out.
very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee
Okay.
members, for discussing this.
Have a good evening.
Take care.
Where are we at now? We deferred 094, right? And we just finished 092 and 093. Okay, so we are at application CAV 095 of 2023 at 1301 Avon Crescent. Again, the application is CAV 095 of 2023 at 1301 Avon Crescent. Anyone interested in this application, please call 905-815-6095. I don't think I'll ever memorize that phone number, so it's just not going to happen. Good evening, Mr. Loxton.
Good evening. I'm Ted Loxton. Okay, sorry, my screen just jumped on me. Ted Loxton from Bayview Design Group, representing Nicole Willett. We're here tonight asking for an RFA of 44.23%, where 41% is permitted. I've read staff's report and it covers, I think, everything I was going to say, so my comments will be fairly brief. If we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so as you can see, we've really tried to fit into the neighborhood with respect to the style, scale, overall look and feel of the proposed dwelling. And that's reflected if we can go to the next slide. So that's reflected here. The top image is the existing streetscape. The one below is to the best of my ability anyway, the proposed dwelling in amongst the streetscape. So you get a sense of the scale. It's not going to be oversized. And in fact, my thought is the bungalow that's there existing is almost undersized for the property compared to the adjacent dwellings. So if we can go to the next slide, please. And yeah, just as a recap, it's our opinion, as it is staff's, that this proposal satisfies the 4 tests of the Planning Act. And beyond that, I'm just here to answer any questions that anyone may have for me.
Very well, thank you. Any questions or items of clarification of Mr. Loxton at this time? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called with interest for this application, or anyone in the audience raised their hand with interest for this application?
There is no phone calls at this time.
Okay, very well. We'll take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, having reviewed the materials, including the written staff report, as well as the applicant's materials, including the presentation, I'm satisfied that the requested variance conforms to the four tests of the Act. The additional gross floor area is relatively modest in terms of number, and the design of the building significantly works to reduce the massing, break up the form of the building. It's an attractive design that works well in the neighborhood. So I will put forward a motion of approval, subject to two standard conditions, those being that the proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated April 26, 2023, as submitted, and that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued. I would note that there were no members of the public present or materials submitted with respect to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. None opposed. Thank you, Mr. Loxton. Have a good evening.
Thanks very much. Have a good evening.
Okay, application CAV 096 of 2023 at 142 Herald Avenue. Again, it's CAV 096 of 2023 at 142 Herald Avenue. If you're interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. I do have 3 letters of objection on hand from Ms. Fiona Price and Mr. John McDonald, and Ms. Maria Bowe and Jason Valenti. Good evening, Mr. Heuther. How are you?
Good evening, Madam Chair. I'm very well, thank you. Committee members, good evening as well. So I'll just, I'll run through this briefly. Jason here for the record, HDS Dwell on behalf of the owners of 142 Herald Avenue. It's a new 2-story replacement dwelling. We're seeking 2 variances to the current bylaw. I'll just run through, if you go to the next slide, please. We're seeking an RFA variance as well as a coverage variance. The coverage variance is slightly technical in nature. Next slide, please. We can go to the next one as well, page 4. That's perfect. So the first variance is for residential floor area. This is an area and a neighborhood in transition. Many new builds of similar size have recently gone through and approved in the surrounding neighborhoods. This home is designed to be slightly understated. It's a gabled wood-sided cottage style with slightly lower sloped roofs. It will assimilate extremely well within the neighborhood. There are 2-story homes up and down the street that are designed in a relatively similar fashion to this. The house complies with all setback requirements as well as building height, thus showing that it can comfortably sit on or fit on the lot fabric. The additional GFA relates in the most part to the inclusion of a single car garage within the home rather than a separate structure, as is sort of prevalent in the neighborhood. In order to make this work, we have a mudroom and pantry off the backside to bring the clients from the garage into the home. As well, on the second floor, we've provided a smaller laundry room that will serve as an amenity space for the 3-bedroom home. The facade of the house is well articulated in order to break up any perceived massing. We have stepped roof lines down to lower story levels to transition the home better with the neighboring homes on either side. And the house aligns well in both the front and rear yards with neighboring properties. Next slide, please. With respect to the coverage variance, it relates entirely to this single story open unenclosed covered porch. The dwelling, the garage, and the front porch all comply with the bylaw requirements. The porch feature again is a flat roof structure, not much higher than the current fence line around the property. And it will not create any sort of overlook conditions for the neighboring dwellings. I have read through the letters of objection on file, and I can certainly respect the opinions of the neighbor. However, I would put forth that we certainly feel that this design will fit gently within this neighborhood. It will not dwarf other homes as it complies with heights, setbacks, and is aligned well along the street facade. The coverage variances for a small covered porch feature, again, single story in nature. What you're looking at is a 2,300 square foot home and not a McMansion, as was stated in some of the letters. It will not overcrowd the streetscape nor present any sort of overbuild. We think it's a fantastic addition to this neighborhood, and that the variances certainly meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and I'm available for any questions whatsoever.
Thank you, Mr. Heather. Are there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. Heather at this time? Okay. I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in with interest in this application?
Madam Chair, I do see people who objected to the application. However, they need to raise a hand if they want to speak. And if you can repeat again, so.
Anyone in attendance that would like to speak to this application, please raise your hand so that you can be invited into the panel. Okay, if no one has raised their hand, Madam Secretary Treasurer, we will take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Tlowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'll move that this application be approved as applied for. I believe it is a very sensitive design in the community. I do not see it causing any impacts. With that, I believe it meets the 4 tests. I would note that there were 3 letters of opposition, but Madam Chair, in those letters of opposition, there's no one raises what the impact of this house would be. The letters basically suggest the house is too big, but without any description of how that would cause an impact. And one also talks about houses being on top of each other with minimal setbacks, but I would note that there's no setback variance being requested here. I would make the approval of this application subject to the proposed dwelling being constructed in general accordance with plans dated April 26, 2023, and that the approval expires in 2 years if the building permit's not issued.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Tlowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, committee members.
Have a good evening. Okay, application CAV 097 of 2023 at 379 Tennyson Drive. Again, it's CAV 097 of 2023 at 379 Tennyson Drive. I have a letter of support from Mr. Rohan Ram. Who is the agent for this application? Mr. Joseph Dahm.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Good evening.
Okay, good evening. My name is Joe Dome, 133 Torresdale Avenue, agent for the owner. The owner would like to construct a new two-story dwelling to accommodate their family livability needs, and there are 4 requested variances. Variance number 1 refers to a small eave encroachment of 0.7 meters into the south side yard, which is a negligible impact. Variance number 2 refers to a south interior side yard of 2.03 meters. However, this only applies to the south side buttresses, and the rest of the sidewall of the dwelling meets the bylaw setback of 2.4 meters. The north side yard meets the side yard setback requirements, and no front yard setback variance is requested. Variances number 3 and 4 refer to the proposed lot coverage of 30.3% and the proposed RFA of 39.04%. And a lot of thought was put into the design by the owner and architect to mitigate impact and to be sensitive to the design guidelines for stable residential communities. The design of the dwelling does incorporate lowered roof lines, evoking the appearance of a 1.5-story dwelling, and also includes bump-ins for each main wall at the front, both sides and rear, as well as step backs to the second story, which further break up the massing. There are a number of dwellings approved in the neighborhood for similar larger massings. For example, 449 Tennyson Drive and 432 Tennyson Drive. Planning staff comments are supportive of the application. There is 1 letter of support and no neighbors are in opposition. And overall, we feel this application is reasonable and minor in nature, and I'd be happy to answer any further questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Joe. Any questions or items of clarification at this time? No. And has anyone called in with interest for this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
There is no phone calls at this time.
Okay, very well. We'll take the matter into committee then. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Ms. Yu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the application materials provided by the applicant and staff reports, and having carried out the site visit, it has been determined that the minor variances proposed by the applicant can be considered as minor and has minimal impacts to the neighborhood. As such, I'd like to say that the variances meet all the 4 tests. And as such, I'd like to move the motion forward with the approval of this application. We subject to standard conditions. Condition number 1, that the 2-story detached dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the plans provided for July 12, 2023 Committee of Adjustment meeting. Condition number 2, the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Yu. Is there any discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Your application has been approved, none opposed. Mr. Dom, stay with us because I believe you got the next presentation as well.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, CAV 098 of 2023 at 507 Wildwood Drive. Again, it's CAV 098 of 2023 at 507 Wildwood Drive. I have comments from a Miss Ida Kamara. And if you are interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Go ahead, Mr. Dom.
Yes, hi again. My name is Joe Dome, 133 Torresdale Avenue, agent for the owner. The owner would like to construct a new 2-story dwelling, and there are 2 variances requested here. Number 1 is the garage floor area, which is a 1.82 square meter increase over the bylaw, which we do feel is minor and has no negative impacts to the streetscape. And the proposed floor area ratio of 44.4%, which we do feel is a reasonable increase, as there are a number of design elements proposed which do help mitigate massing. The planning report referenced the single-story elements and massing that is broken up into smaller elements and is compatible with the character of existing newer two-story dwellings, including those with similar variances. And so for an example, across the street, 494 Wildwood Drive was also approved for an identical variance of 44.4% FAR. The dwelling complies with the bylaw for lot coverage, overall height, and setbacks. There was one neighbor from 515 that wrote in requesting the house not be any taller than what has been approved, and comments regarding other constructions in the area and the need to clean up afterward. As I mentioned, the dwelling does meet the bylaw for height, and the owner will do everything possible to ensure minimal disruption. And overall, given the design mitigations, the positive staff report, and no neighbors in opposition, we feel that the proposal is fairly straightforward, reasonable, and minor in nature, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Dom. Is there are there any questions or items of clarification at this time? Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in with interest into this application?
There is no phone calls at this time.
Okay. If no one has raised their hand from the attendees for this application, we can take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Mr. Dickey, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Based on my review of the owner's application and the site plans, the building and elevations, there was my site visit and the presentation by the owner agent and the planning staff's report. It is my opinion, I am satisfied that the variance is minor in nature and conforms to the 4 tests under the Planning Act and would have no negative impact on the neighbors. Therefore, I put forth a motion that the application as applied for be approved, subject to the 2 standard conditions, that the 2-story detached dwelling be constructed in general accordance plans dated January 17, 2023 as submitted, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision. Building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you and
Thank you
have a
very
good evening.
Thank you, you too.
Application CAV 099 of 2023 at 58 Normandy Place. Again, it's CAV 099 of 2023 at 58 Normandy Place. I do have a letter of objection from Mitchell Kane on behalf of Madeleine Kochik, who is the agent. Good evening, Mr. Duquette.
Yeah, good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening to the rest of the committee. Yeah, let's hop right into it. We can move over to the next slide. My name is Jason Duckett, and I am the owner of 58 Normandy Place, and we are currently seeking relief from zoning bylaw 2014-014 as amended to permit a rear yard setback of 4.5 meters, whereas our minimum rear yard setback of 6.0 meters is required. Next slide, please. In 2018, the previous owners of 58 Normandy Place submitted a minor variance application, which was approved for this property to permit a balcony projection of 4.26 meters beyond the main wall. With the addition of our stairs, our balcony was then classified to a deck. Under the zoning bylaw, decks are included in the measurement of a rear yard setback. The addition of these stairs was meant to allow for ease of access from the deck to the ground level. The stairs are used for transportation purposes only, and we feel it does not impede our neighbors in a negative way while still maintaining the intent of the zoning bylaw and official plan. The addition of the stairs also provides us with a second exit on the main floor of our property. Next slide, please. This is just illustrating the confirmation of the permit for the existing deck that was in place after we purchased the property, and we received this from the city of Oakville just a few weeks ago. And if we can move to the next slide, please. I believe it is just my thank you notes, but before I jump into my ending notes here, I would like to address the comments provided by 60 Normandy Place from a Miss Madeline Kochik, if I pronounce that correctly. And I also believe these comments have been shared with the COA committee. So firstly, I would like to just say that I do fully respect and hear their comments regarding our existing deck. With that said, we do ask that any reference to the 2018 Committee of Adjustment hearing within the comments of 60 Normandy Place be treated as irrelevant and void. I will not comment further on anything that has happened in the 2018 Committee of Adjustments with this property. As I mentioned, my wife and I did not live here at the time and cannot speak to any of the facts provided within the comments. We were completely unaware of any concerns or frustrations from existing neighbors after moving into our home in December of 2022. It is also stated it is also stated that their property has been unlivable over the past 5.5 years due to our balcony. My wife and I believe this to be a rather harsh statement, and I respectfully ask the committee to not allow our hearing to deviate from the minor variance in question, which is the rear yard setback. It is my understanding that we are gathered here this evening to discuss not to discuss the size and dimensions of the deck, which has again been fully approved by the town of Oakville in 2018. We trust in the town of Oakville's process, and respected members of the committee determined this to be a minor variance in nature back in 2018. Our home was purchased with this in mind. It is clear that the residents of 60 Normandy Place has used our minor variance request as an attempt to have our existing deck modified beyond reasonable means, which has now been part of this home and community for over 5 years with no additional complaints. Lastly, I will also mention that we do have full support from our neighbors to the east at 56 Normandy, and we are happy to have them provide a letter of recommendation if it will further support our minor variance request. And with that, I would like to thank the committee, city, and public for their time and consideration on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ducat. Are there any questions or items of clarification of the applicant at this time? Mr. Talowski, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item of clarification. It's suggested in the neighbor's comments that the stairs were built without a permit. If you were to get approved, you would need a permit for those stairs that are already built. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I have been trying to rectify this issue. That was absolutely my mistake in not knowing the city bylaws. This all came about by trying to get a permit from the city, and I've been in communication with them to receive that permit. I've been notified that there are no issues with the stairs itself, and that they can be up to 0.6 meters away from the rear yard setback. But that is the next steps after this minor variance is moved forward.
Madam Chair, I just note if the committee approves this variance that staff haven't asked for that condition, but it should be there, that a permit be issued.
Okay. Ms. McKnight, any comments?
Thank you. Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Staff did have concerns over legitimizing the modification made by the owner. This isn't a condition or action we want to condone. However, in this case, staff recognize that the stairs simply allow access to the deck from ground level. And from our review, we feel as though these stairs are minor in nature. With regards to the condition, I'm sorry that was missed on the comments provided. However, that is a condition that we feel necessary in incorporating into the decision made tonight.
Very well. And
Thank
we'll
you.
add our standard approval within 2 years if the building permit has not been issued or Who would like to move a motion? If there are no calls or any interest in this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer, you
There
can
is,
take the matter into committee.
Yeah, I'm just promoting Jonathan Myler. He raised his hand and wants to speak in regards to the application.
Sure. Mr. Marlowe, are you on computer or on phone?
Can you hear me, Madam Chair?
Yes, we can hear you. Do you have access to the camera? There we go. Okay.
There we are. So on my right is Madeline Kochich, and on my left, Aria, both of whom have filed objections to this, along with Mr. Ray, but we won't bother with Mr. Ray tonight. Let me start by saying that I thought Mr. Duckett's presentation was very eloquent and 99% accurate. The only part that I found a little bit inaccurate was the information that he's been informed by the building department or somebody that the stairs are not a problem and that they only need a 0.2 meter setback, if I understood him correctly. It seems to me from reading the comments of the town that Mr. Kochich has, Mr. Duckett has converted a second floor balcony into a first floor, second floor deck. And I'm not proposing to get into a technical discussion about the difference between a balcony and a deck. But the comments of the town are clear that if it is indeed a deck, the setback must be 6 feet unless there's a variance. My client's position obviously is there should be no variance. And to explain that and to illustrate that, you have the ability to look at the last page of Aria Koch's affidavit, the last photo, or am I supposed to somehow load that up for you to see?
If you've sent it in, we should be able to, but if it has not been submitted,
And receipt has been acknowledged.
oh no, we have it in our package. I'm just saying that if you haven't asked town staff to be able to load it, I don't know if they'll be able to retrieve it from the package. Am I correct, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
Correct. This is not sent as a presentation tonight. It was sent as a comments. Comments are distributed to you, to all members, and everyone has in front of them. However, I will try to load one of the exhibition that you sent. Just a moment, please.
Was that a question to me?
No, she's just asking you to hold on for a moment. Jason, will you pronounce your last name for me?
Marlowe.
Duckett?
Yeah, you were close.
Okay, I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's quite okay. And while I'm off mute, I will clarify that we had submitted our stairs initially to receive a permit from the city. We received notification from the city directly that our stairs were okay to be 0.6 meters away from the rear property line. And it was the deck itself that was required to have a 6 meter setback. So I did just want to clarify that I have been in communication with the city and am trying to get the valid permit as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thank you for that clarification. We have both letters. Rather than hold up the meeting, did you want to read an excerpt from it?
Right, so I direct you
Yeah,
to the
those two
final
first.
page of Aria Koch's affidavit, which is a picture of the deck and the stairs.
Madam Chair, it's coming on the screen.
Okay, very well. Thank you.
That's the first picture. I prefer to start with the final picture. There we go. All right, there is the stairs. Can you rotate it 90 degrees?
I'm not sure that's going to happen.
No, we can't do that right now.
All right, well, I think we can deal with it at 90 degrees off kilter, so to speak. It's an enormous deck, and I agree with Mr. Duckett. We can't go back to 2018 and revise history. And I agree with him that he was not the owner at the time and can't be held responsible for that deck. But the stairs are what concern us in particular. And I'd like you to consider the stairs in the context of the town's comments. At the second page of the town's comments, the first paragraph of the page begins, the applicant is seeking relief from zoning bylaw 2014-014. The last sentence of that paragraph reads, the intent of regulating the rear yard setback is to ensure no negative overlook and privacy impacts on abutting properties. Now, whether you see that deck and those stairs in their proper plane or inverted 90 degrees, one can see that it is an enormous overlook and an enormous privacy impact on the abutting property. And the second paragraph, middle sentence, says the addition of stairs to the existing platform has triggered a change of definition from a balcony to a deck. Now, in terms of overlook, I don't think it matters whether you call this a balcony or a deck. I appreciate there are different definitions in the zoning bylaw, but I don't think those definitions are particularly helpful in this case. But whether it's a balcony or a deck, there is an extraordinary overlook. You may as well, standing on those stairs, not that I've done that personally, but I've stood in the backyard, you may as well be standing in the neighbor's backyard. The staff go on to say in the third paragraph, staff recognize that each townhouse within the row has a second-story balcony off the rear of the dwelling. That's almost correct. One doesn't, but that's not really relevant. The final sentence of that, the penultimate sentence of that paragraph says, as the stairs are used for transportation purposes only, staff do not feel that they will result in further overlook or privacy impacts on abutting properties. Now, I assume the staff member that wrote that hasn't seen these stairs. And anybody going up and down will be looking right into the neighbor's property. And staff are of the opinion that the deck is minor in nature, and I'm not going to attempt to define minor. Everybody on the committee has a much better appreciation of what's minor and what is not minor than I do. But staff go on to say, and maintains the intent of the zoning bylaw and the official plan. Well, if the intent of the zoning bylaw is to prevent negative overlook and privacy impacts, then the zoning bylaw has not been observed. The conclusion of staff is, on this basis, it is staff's opinion that the requested variance maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw, as it results in a dwelling that maintains the character of the neighborhood. You will not find one second floor balcony with a staircase anywhere in that neighborhood. And my understanding, although it may be incorrect, is that stairs are not allowed on second floor balconies. They are allowed on decks. So we contrive the fiction that this is really a deck and not a second floor balcony. But clearly it is a second floor balcony. And I'm not here to argue on technicalities as to whether it's a balcony or a deck. But one way or the other, the intent of the bylaw is being violated by the overlook of these stairs. The conclusion ends with, as there are no negative impacts to abutting properties. Now, I'm not going to rest on the fact that this staircase was built without a building permit, and I accept what Mr. Duckett says, that it was built without a building permit because he didn't know of the regulations or didn't make the necessary inquiries beforehand. But I think most people know that any building of any kind on a property requires a building permit. So it's unfortunate that he didn't make that inquiry, but we are where we are. He now wants a deck, or what he calls a deck, with a 4.5 meter setback as opposed to a 6 meter. My client's position is that it should be 6 meters, but if it has to be 4.5 meters, it has to be 4.5 meters. And there's nothing before the committee that supports this notion that it only has to be 0.2 meters. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Marler. Are there any questions of Mr. Marler at this time? Or Ms. Kochek? Mr. Talowski, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Marler, what relief is your client seeking here, if I can put it that way? I agree with you that you can't go back to what was approved in 2018. Is it to have the stairs removed or to have the stairs screened? What is it your client, because if this were to be denied, the deck would stay, the stairs would have to be removed. Is that what you're asking for?
Absolutely. I think the stairs have to be removed under any circumstances. Whether it's because you can't have stairs to a second floor balcony or you can't have stairs that overlook a neighboring property, the stairs must, in my opinion, go. Should never have been built in the first place.
Thank you.
Any further questions or items of clarification? Mr. Duckett, I will allow you to speak, but you've taken your time, and now it was Mr. Marler's, and there's no back and forth. But I'll allow you this leniency. So go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. And again, I totally understand and hear their comments. I just want to reiterate that the stairs are for transportation purposes only. They are not to impede on my neighbors or my privacy. We have a young puppy that they were essentially built for and to have ease of access to our yard. You know, the view into the yard does not change from the stairs to our existing patio. There is no difference. I understand their concerns with that, but no matter, you know, the placement or positioning or size of our deck, we have the same view into their backyard. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Marler, I'm going to ask you a question. Given that the staff are not really opposed to this application, and I think it's a bit harsh to ask the tenant to remove the stairs, would your client be amenable to some sort of screening that would, whether it be a lattice fence or some, you know, they have these green screens that sometimes can be applied to the sides so that going up and down those stairs, the lookout into your yard is covered. Would that be something that is acceptable to you?
Well, in theory,
because it is within our purview to put that condition. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
If you did screen it, it would be like putting a wall on the side of the property 20 feet high. There's a fence height bylaw limit. I don't know what it is, but it's certainly not 20 feet. With due respect to staff, I think their comments and their conclusion are complete and utter nonsense. It's quite obvious that nobody went to look at this structure that had a hand in writing those comments.
With all due respect, I think you're being a little bit disrespectful right now. I believe that when staff do their work. They do make a site visit. They are aware of the situation. They actually provide us with pictures. So I would respectfully ask you to be respectful to staff. However, I will have them comment on your comments personally. Having said that, I'm going to turn the matter over to Ms. McKnight.
Thank you. Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Staff completed a thorough review of the application materials and underwent a site visit. From staff's review, as Mr. Marler has mentioned, we do feel as though the addition of the stairs to the deck existing is minor in nature and does meet the 4 tests of a minor variance. The comments prepared, however, are of staff's opinion, and we do respect your comments, voice, and opinions voiced today. Mr. Marler.
Thank you, Ms. McKnight. Are there any other questions? Mr. Talowski, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Supplemental for Mr. Marler. And Mr. Marler, I recognize 5 years has gone by, but I seem to recall at the time, and the conditions in the 2018 variance would suggest that your client did not want the deck screened from their property, and I believe requested, as the variance suggests, that it be reduced to railing height, which would indicate to me that your client wasn't concerned about privacy at that time, but now they are. Are you able to speak to that?
Well, I wasn't at that hearing. I've read the minutes, and I don't believe there's any reference to the railing height in the minutes, although I could be wrong. I only know what I've seen and what my clients have told me now. You're right, they objected to that deck in 2018. It was, in my view, and I'm going to be called disrespectful again, foisted on the Committee of Adjustment under the guise that it was a replacement deck, which it never was. There was no deck there, and the material file shows there was no deck there. The committee was misled at that time, and it's unfortunate that decision was made, but we have to live with it. So let's live with what's there, but not compound the problem. It's totally out of character with the neighborhood, and it should never have been allowed in the first place. But I know that's disrespectful because 3 of you were on that committee that allowed it. But there we are, and I assure the chair I'm not intending to be disrespectful. I'm just intending to be honest and giving you my client's opinion, which happens to be mine as well. I think this should never have been allowed, and the stairs just make a bad situation worse.
The picture that you submitted, Mr. Marler, shows that your client has a similar deck, correct?
Yeah, no properties have a similar deck anywhere in that development. And all of the neighbors have been respectful of the zoning bylaw with 1.5 meter decks. One of the 5 houses in that block has no deck at all, but that doesn't affect anything. But
No, I was just asking for a clarification. So these houses did not come with decks in the first place, is what you're saying?
We don't know. David Nelson in his report said he assumed the decks were built, or balconies is the term he used, or there was an option for Juliet balconies, which is, everybody knows, is sort of a non-balcony. It's just a rail outside a window to stop you falling to the ground. And we know from what we can see today is that 2 of the 5 units had no balcony at all. One of them happened to be the subject property, and the picture of its condition in 2017 is included in the material. And the unit at the end has no balcony. To the fact that they have or don't have a balcony, I don't think is relevant to Mr. Duckett's application. The objection to Mr. Duckett's application is that he's making a bad situation worse, and the committee should not allow that.
Thank you for your submission. Ms. Yu, go ahead.
I want to ask, through the Madam Chair, I want to ask a question to Mr. Johnson Maria. Sorry, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. So I want to ask, so since most of the units have balconies, are you okay with the balconies, but not decks?
Am I okay with the balcony and not with the deck?
Yeah, regarding the privacy point.
Well, the privacy point, a deck, obviously, there already is a ground floor deck. And there's access to the ground floor deck, and there are deck chairs on the ground floor deck. And the dog can get in and out of the back door of the house very easily. So it's total nonsense to say that the stairs are necessary so the dog can get up to the second floor balcony. The dog doesn't have to be on the second floor balcony, probably shouldn't be on the second floor balcony. And certainly the privacy of a dog on the ground floor is perfectly acceptable to anybody, and perhaps not acceptable to be on the second floor balcony. So I don't know if that answers your question, whether we have a preference for a deck or a balcony, but what we don't have a preference for is the stairs going up to a balcony, whether it's for a dog or people or carrying furniture.
Okay, thank you. If there's, and we can take the matter into committee and start the discussion. Who would like to start us off? I'll give you a couple of minutes. I know this one's a tough one. Can support staff put up the pictures that Mr. Marler provided once again? If we could just go through them slowly. Okay.
So that's unit 54, second from the east end, with a 1.5 meter balcony. That is 58 with the staircase almost touching the fence. That's 58 again, almost touching the fence, and included to show that I think it shows the small balcony on the left side, which is 60, and the balcony on the right side, which is again 1.5 meters.
The landing is horizontal with the fence.
Okay, go next. Thank you.
And then that's a front-on picture of number 60, showing what appears to be a typical balcony in the neighborhood, where there are balconies there of that size. Some of them are wider, but none of them are deeper. They're all 1.5 meters, except 58, of course.
Understood.
And that's another picture, if it's not the same one, of 60, showing the small 1.5 by maybe, probably 1.5, maybe 2 meters in width balcony. That's a picture of how the 60 was before the deck was put up. It's not a very clear picture, but on the extreme right is the window, almost at ground floor level, or at ground floor level, and on the left is a shadow, which is the covering of the next story window, where the balcony now is, and where there previously was no balcony. That picture can be compared to 52 Normandy, which is the penultimate. There's my young client, Aria, with the view that she had in 2017 before the deck was put up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
How much space is there between the fence and the actual stairs, Mr. Duckett?
I don't have the exact measurement. All I know is that it did comply with the 0.6 meters. Unfortunately, we're part of a townhome, and myself and 60 Normandy Place do have the smallest backyards. We are on an angled road. Many of the townhouses do have a bigger yard. So given the existing deck that was there, that was the best that we could do to stay within those zoning bylaws.
Okay, no, my question is pertaining to, where the stairs come and adjacent to the fence.
Yeah.
Is there room there to plant something like a tall spruce or some sort of screening that will give them more of a view of greenery versus wood? It's just a question.
I could absolutely make something work. I will mention that our properties and backyards are surrounded by greenery. Our backyards essentially get no sun. There is so much greenery within our neighborhood, but we could absolutely accommodate that if that would help.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Talowski.
Madam Chair, to answer your question, based on the plan in the staff report, it looks like the stairs are 1 foot from the adjacent side property line and go to 5'8" from the back property line.
It's hard to get something without dimensions, I guess. Right. 5 foot, 1 foot. Okay. Is anyone ready to start the discussion? Mr. Hardcastle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this stage, I guess I'll start the conversation off in terms of resolutions. I recall dealing with this back when the deck was before us the previous time with the previous property owner. I do recall a significant conversation with respect to mitigating the impacts of the size of the deck and the screening. And while I appreciate the need that's been expressed by Mr. Duckett, I think that my reservations at that time, which were mitigatable by the inclusion of screening on the deck, are not transferable to the stairs. I think that the stairs push out into the rear yard by almost 10 feet, 10 additional feet past the extent of the existing deck. And I think that providing screening on the stairs will be highly impractical and probably ineffective. And based upon the amount of space between the property line and the existing stairs, I'm concerned that greenery would not be viable to be located there. So I'm going to put forward a motion of refusal. I think that the stairs will exacerbate the condition to a degree in which I cannot support the variance, and I do not believe that it meets the 4 tests of the Act.
Okay, is there a discussion on this recommendation? Mr. Talowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too recall this application, and I recall there being concerns from neighbors, and that the resolution as to why the deck got approved, unlike Mr. Marler's assertion that it never should have been was that there was agreement on how to screen the deck to satisfy neighbors. And so on the one hand, I could argue the impact was caused, any overlook impact was caused by the creation of the deck in its existing configuration. On the other hand, I find myself in agreement with Mr. Hardcastle that with the size of the structure now, with the stairs and the additional overlook that's created from the stairs, from the landing, and the significant further intrusion into the rear yard, is just making this structure in its current situation undesirable.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay, so the motion to refuse this application is on the table. All those in support? Okay. All those opposed? Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Duckett, your application has been refused. Denied.
Thanks for the time. In terms of like next steps, what is the timeline for having something like that removed?
Honestly, I'm not sure. You'll have to speak to planning and building staff, and they can provide you with direction, unless Ms. McKnight has an idea that of next steps, and she can share them with you at this present time.
Yes, for you, Madam Chair. I do not have an exact timeline. However, I can suggest that you speak with our building staff, and they will identify the next steps to be taken.
Sounds good. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Okay, the next application on our agenda is CAV 006 of 2023, deferred from February the 8th of 2023. Again, it's CAV 006 of 2023 at 217 Chartwell Road.
Good afternoon, or good evening.
Good afternoon, Ms.
It is evening.
Good evening, Ms. Beaumont.
Arlene Beaumont, Outred and Associates. We're the agents for the owners of 217 Chartwell Road. It's a vacant lot. We're proposing a new 2-story dwelling on the property. If you could go to the first slide, please. We have a rendering of the dwelling. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to deal with an issue that staff brought up in the staff report about the driveway width. Next slide, please. Yes, so when we came in February, our driveway did comply with the 9-meter bylaw width. Through the DES, and one of the reasons we deferred in February is because staff asked that our DESP application be revised. There was some discrepancies between the DESP application and our Committee of Adjustment application. So we did work through that process. One of the things that occurred through DESP is we were asked to retain a tree in the front yard. My clients have agreed to do so. And in retaining that tree, somehow inadvertently, the driveway got wider. I think the architect added a walkway. They took a walkway from the doorway and added it to the side beside the driveway. The driveway did get wider. I have spoken to the architect. We will go back to the previous driveway configuration, and it will be 9 meters. We will make the driveway comply with the bylaw requirement. Next slide, please. So our first variance is for parapet height. We're asking for a parapet height that is 31.31 meters, or 1 foot higher than permitted. And that excess height is required to adequately screen the rooftop mechanical equipment. The overall height of the dwelling does comply with the bylaw requirement. Next slide, please. You can just skip that one. Next slide, please. So I've just, this is the site plan, and we are requesting variances for side yards and window well encroachment and dwelling depth. On the south side, I have outlined the property lines in blue. On the south side, you can see the property line juts into the property. I would love to know how this happened. I think there may have been at one point a lot addition years and years ago. But anyway, the property line does jut into the property. And so we require a variance for south side yard setback of 3.99 meters, just at that pinch point. We also require a variance for the window well, which again encroaches into the side yard at that pinch point. On the north side, I've highlighted in green the area of the dwelling that requires the variance for side yard. It's actually a spice kitchen, and it's a one-story bump out from the face of the dwelling. It's 7.02 meters wide, and the balance of that side does comply with the bylaw requirement for side yard setback. The dwelling depth is at the basement level. We're proposing a dwelling depth of 28.46 meters at the garden level, which is the basement. At the main floor level, the proposed dwelling depth is 24.36 meters. And at the second floor level, it's 21.52 meters. Next slide, please. So as I said, on the north side, our side yard setback is to a bump out for the spice kitchen, which is 7.02 meters wide. The rest of the side yard complies. Next slide, please. On the south side, the 3.99 meters is to that indentation in the lot line where it jogs into the property. Next slide, please. And the window well encroachment, again, where that lot line jogs into the property. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you the dwelling depth. This is the basement floor plan, and as you can see, the dwelling depth is 28.46 meters. Next slide, please. And the ground floor plan, the dwelling depth reduces down to 24.36 meters. Next slide, please. We also have a variance for garage door width. This is a side-loaded garage that is at the basement level. So there's a ramp taking the cars down to the basement level. The garage door is set back 7 meters from the side yard lot line. Next slide, please. And our architects have provided these renderings. So this is what the people on the north side, the residents of the north side would see. And we have had discussion with both neighbors, south and north. And my clients have agreed to put in this hedge to help screen that driveway. Next slide, please. And then the architects also wanted to show, even without the hedge, there's not a lot of that driveway and the garage door that would be seen, even if the hedge weren't planted. But as I said, they have agreed to plant that hedge. Next slide, please. So this is, again, a very deep property with mature vegetation. The variances on the south side are for the side yard setback or because of the odd lot line jutting into the property. The variance on the north side for side yard is just for that spice kitchen bump out. It's a one-story bump out. And as I said, the garage is located in the basement. The doors are set back 7 meters, which is the bylaw requirement. And the garage is not going to be visible to the neighbor on the north side, especially when that hedge is planted. Next slide, please. Dwelling depth. At the below grade portion is 28.46. The main floor portion is 24.36 and reduces to about 21.5 the second story. Dwelling respects the bylaw requirement for overall height, and we just need a 31 centimeter variance on the parapet height to properly screen the rooftop mechanicals. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Beaumont. Any questions or items of clarification of Ms. Beaumont at this time? Okay, I see none. If no one is called in for this application with any interest, we can take the matter into committee. Mr. Hardcastle?
I wanted to, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask a question of Ms. Beaumont.
Oh, sorry, I
Um,
didn't.
I was a little late on putting my hand up. Ms. Beaumont, you'd indicated that you'd be looking to modify the driveway to eliminate the need for the variance.
Yes.
Would that be accommodated and the tree protected as well?
Yes, and I think I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Hardcastle, because when I look at this plan, I think it would be better actually to make the driveway a little bit narrower because because of the tree. I'm not sure if we can go back to that slide, but I think it would be perhaps better for that tree that we intend to retain if we did, bring back that to the 9 meters. I don't think the architect really meant to bring it to 10.11, and in fact, the dimension came off the plan. We didn't know that it had sort of grown, and staff were the ones that alerted us to the fact that we had inadvertently made the driveway wider. I'm sorry, did I answer your question, sir?
Thank you. Yes, you did. And maybe I could ask the Secretary Treasurer if she could put up the revised plan that was shown in the presentation, just so I could take a quick look at it again, please.
I think it was about the 3rd slide in. That's it, I think.
Yeah.
So we would be going back to the one on the left-hand side that is 9 meters wide. And of course, the tree will be retained as well.
So my assumption is that the walkway would be modified then?
Yes, that's correct. So originally we had a walkway going sort of in the middle of the lot going to the door. We've taken that out to save the tree. And I think what they did was sort of added a walkway to the side of the driveway, but of course that made the driveway too wide.
So presumably the solution would be to do a small pad that does a right turn towards the driveway as opposed to extending towards the front of the.
That's correct. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or items of clarification? Okay, we're ready to take the matter into committee. Mr. Talowski, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm prepared to move this application be approved as applied for, finding it meets the tests of the Planning Act. I don't believe there'll be any impacts from these variances. I would make the approval subject to 3 conditions: that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted elevation drawings dated May 17th, 2023, that the applicant replace the site plan to bring the driveway width into zoning compliance to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning, and that the approval expires in 2 years if the building permit has an issue. And I would
Very well.
note that there was no opposition to this application.
Okay, thank you. Is there a discussion for this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night. Confirmation of the minutes for June the 28th. June the 28th, who was there? I think we were all there except for Mr. Dickey, right? Or were
I'll
you
do
there?
it, Madam Chair, but Madam Chair, before we adjourn, I just want to note that on Harold Avenue, in my motion, I believe I gave the wrong date for the drawings. It should be May 15th, 2023. I think I used the date from Avon of April 26th, so I just wanted to note that correction.
Harold is application CV 096.
Yes.
Did you get that, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay, very well. If there's nothing else, we can have a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn, Mr. Hardcastle, at 9:10 p.m. Please let us know when we're offline.